Hello and welcome to Powerbench. Today I'm going to be testing this rechargeable camping lantern, which is also a power bank, which I bought from Amazon on one of their lightning deals. I paid $14.99 and the usual price seems to be $18.99, so high enough that hopefully it's a reasonable quality item. There is a little misleading information on the listing for this. It claims that it's 6400 milliampere hours at one point in the listing, but the rest of the listing does say 5200 milliampere hours. So we'll test it and find out which is correct. They do a 10,400 milliampere hour one as well, but that one seems to be quite a bit bigger, so it wasn't really of interest to me. So let's open the box and see what's inside. Well, let's have a look at the box first. Bunch of uses. So it is waterproof. Well, apparently I haven't tested that, but I ought to. That one will be a bit harder to video, but why not? Fire resistant, I'm not sure how true that will be. Claims to have a 4-watt LED. 100 hours lighting time. 2.1 amp output, so we'll be putting that to the test. And a number of different brightness levels. And built-in magnets. Well, we'll test that as well. So, let's open up. So we've got one of those classic lift-out boxes. Open that in a minute. And a power bank, light thing, and nothing else. So let's get rid of the box. Okay, what do we have in the green box? Some instructions and a cable, and that's it. Well, this cable does not look like it's going to be a quality item. It's very tiny, it's very folded up. Let me just adjust the lighting slightly, it's better. Well, it feels pretty nasty. There's no strain relief, it's just hard plastic on the end. Oh, There's a tiny little bit of give, but not a great deal. On the whole, I don't think this is going to be a great cable, but we'll put that to the test as well. Instructions. Okay, so they're all in English, good sign. So the power bank, it's got a good weight to it. The box, does the box say what the weight was? The listing claims 160 grams. 190 grams. Get that in focus. So the listing claims 190 grams. Sorry, the listing claims 160. The box says 190. Let's find out. And the scales say 183. Let's just angle that so you can see. 183. So slightly less than the box claims, quite a bit more than the listing claims. So on one side there's an input, which I assume is where the micro... Well, this is quite fiddly, but... So you need nails really to get this open. That is indeed a micro USB port. So I assume this is a regular USB port, which indeed it is. Only one port, so that's fine. On the top we've got a fold-out hook with a spring. Oh, it's just too bent. Okay, so that's sprung, so you can hook it over a branch or something. Magnets. Let me get something that's metal. So this little toolbox. Oh, yeah. Seems to support its own weight anyway. Yep. Magnets work. So that's good. So we press that. So the charge status lights light up. On the power bank itself, it says 5200 milliamp hours at 3.7 volts, which is a standard. Output 5 volt, 2 amp maximum, not 2.1 amp. So it'll be interesting to see how that holds up. So one press lights up the. So still showing 4 bars charge. That's good. I mean, I've had it in a box for 6 weeks. So long press. Yeah. So you probably can't tell how bright this is. It's doing a reasonable job. So that makes it dimmer, brighter. Oh, that'll be the flashing mode. SOS mode. Not so convinced on the value of that one. Is that medium again? Yeah. Long press to turn off. Long press to turn off. If I turn it on to bright mode, you can see it's bright enough to overwhelm. I've got quite a lot of lighting on this desk. It certainly seems bright enough. You'd certainly be okay outside in a tent, or hanging from a umbrella or something in a garden table. So, which is what I'll use it for, probably. Seems okay. Reasonably bright. Bright enough. Let's turn that off then. So, on with the testing. First off, let's do the power supply cable. So in order to test this, I'm going to use my new method, which involves using a bench power supply, because it's a bit more straightforward. So I'm going to plug in this little load, run it up to 2 amps, 2.1 amps. Nearly there. Adjustment knobs for this aren't the most precise. Right, I'm going to turn up the bench power supply slightly till this reads 5 volts, 2.1 amps. There we go. So that's accounting for the power loss in these cables. So then I'm going to unplug this, set that down carefully. So now I'm going to plug this cable into there, and then the other end into the micro USB slot on the little load. Now this should still be set to 2.1 amps. Oh dear. 0.06 volts. So let's turn that right down. Oh, well, that's slightly alarming. That can't be right, surely. Why is it lighting up? Okay, something's going wrong here. I may have to pause the video to see what's going on here. So that's correct, 5 point... Yeah, I've turned the dials down. 5.14 volts. 2.1 amps. And that cable end looks okay. Let's try this again. Oh, it's because I've been using the wrong socket. My apologies. Right, 2.1 amps, 4.72 volts. So we've got 0.27, let's be generous. Yeah, 0.27 volts drop at 2.1 amps, which is not too bad. Actually, that's better than I expected. Just for the sake of completeness, it's about 5%. Oops. Where are we? 0.27 divided by 5 times 100. Fractions. How do I turn that off? This is what I get for using a stupid calculator. Right, sorry about that. Now I've learned to operate my new calculator. 0.27 divided by 5 times 100 is 5.4% loss. So that's actually better than I expected. How long is that cable? It's quite short. Okay, it's longer than it looks. It's about 50 centimetres. Which is what, about 18 inches? So, better than I thought it would be. So it's not great, but it's not terrible either. A pleasant surprise. So, the next thing to do is to test the output of this. Now it claims to do either 2.1 or 2.0 amps, depending on so at 2.1 amps. There we go, turn that right up. It's outputting a steady 5.06 volts, which is okay. How much does that change as I turn it down? A little bit. Not dramatically. So 5.1 volts down to 5.06. Nothing particularly to worry about there. 5.04. Okay, so that's right. I don't know how far this goes up. 2.4, 2.5. Blimey. Okay, so the voltage starts to drop quite significantly. Just over 2.8 amps. Let's drop that back down to 2.2. So 2.5 amps. That's okay. So this will probably deliver. Let's just try one more thing. So this little meter will report the negotiation status of the power bank. So it's only reporting 1.5 amps. No, it looks like those two internal pins are floating. So this one can't decide. So I don't know that they're floating. It's not clear what this will charge a device at. I'll tell you what, let's find out. plug in a phone. So this particular Apple phone is only drawing 1 amp. Let's try an iPad. Also only drawing 1 amp. So it will deliver 2 amps, but it's not telling devices that it can pull. So this is reporting 1.5 amps is negotiated. I'm not sure which protocol this is. The iPad's actually fully charged, so that probably isn't a great test. So it probably won't charge devices at the full 2.1 amps because it's not telling them it can supply that. So it's not quite as smart as some chargers, but it's okay. It will take longer to charge a smartphone that most won't just start pulling 2 amps without being told they can by the charger. So it will supply 2 amps. It probably won't run at 2 amps for most devices, so that's a bit of a shame. Next up, I'm going to charge this. The little rubber plugs for this are actually quite a good fit, so I have a reasonable degree of confidence that this is waterproof, but I will test it after I've done the discharge test. I will charge this up, we'll see how much power it takes to charge, and then I will start the test. This is still recharging, so just a quick update. It started off drawing about 1 amp. It's getting closer to 0.3 at the moment. I've noticed on the top, you might be able to see this, the status lights appear to flash while it's charging, and I assume that means it's somewhere between 75 and 100% full, which would make sense with the dropping off of the load. So that's useful to know. You can actually see approximately how fully charged it is. I will probably test that once I've discharged it to see if it behaves the same, but that's interesting. Okay, this seems to have finished. The fourth light is indeed fully lit up now. It's just trickling a tiny amount of current now. For as much as it's charged, it ramped down from about 1 amp to, I last saw it about 200 milliamps before it looked like it had decided that was enough. It's drawn 412 milliampere hours, but in this case I'm going to use the 2091 milliwatt hours. So it's drawn about 2 watt hours in topping this up. Now, in order to calculate, let's assume the 5200 figure is correct. So 5200. Can't actually see properly. Right, let's do that. 5200. So that's the milliampere hours times 3.7 volts of the cells inside it. Gives us 19,240 milliwatt hours of capacity in this cell. 2091. 40. So 2091 divided by 19240 equals that times by 100. So I've just put 10% of the theoretical capacity into the power bank. Now, I played with it a little bit earlier while we were making the first part of this video. I've had this power bank, I checked, I bought it at the beginning of July. It's now the 9th of August. So we've got 5 weeks. It's been sitting on the shelf doing nothing. So it looks like it doesn't discharge a great deal internally over a period of time, so that's good to know. I don't know how full it was when it arrived. So standby current seems to be fine. You can put this you know, put it away for 3 months, it'll still have some charge in it, so that's good. So now I'm going to disconnect those items. So now we want to do the power test. So I shall open the output drawer. Now, as usual, I'm going to use this little meter because it's the most accurate one I've got for measuring the power. Now, let's do some testing. So, 5200 milliampere hours times by 3.7 volts gives us 19,240 milliwatt hours capacity. Now, in theory, we can work out that if we divide that by the 5 volts of the output, we expect, best case scenario, 100% efficiency, is this will give us 3,848 milliampere hours. Now, if we're drawing 2.1 amps during the test, that's 2100 milliamps. At best, this should run for 1.83 hours. Now, at that load. Now, realistically, there's going to be some conversion losses as this converts from the it varies. 3 volts to 4.2 volts internally is what a lithium-ion cell outputs. And this will vary. The boost converter will convert that to a steady 5 volts. But there's some loss in that. So the best case is this runs for just under 2 hours at 2.1 amps. But we'll put that to test and see what it actually outputs. Restarting this due to some technical difficulties, you can see the power bank is fully charged. So we shall plug in the little meter. Oscilloscope's going. I've already set this at 2.1 amps. You can see that. And that all looks steady. Let's prop this up so it can be seen. So, oscilloscope steady at just under 5 volts and averaging just over, fluctuating between 2.0 and 2.2 amps, which is about right. So, I'll leave it to it and we'll see how long this lasts. But I'm expecting somewhere just over an hour and a half. So just to, while I'm keeping an eye on this, I've noticed that the voltage is dropping, so it's now at 4.7 volts directly out of the power bank. The oscilloscope is also showing 4.7 volts, and ignoring the voltage loss from the current shunt and the cabling, we're seeing quite a drop on the load as well, down to 4.68 now. We're only a few minutes in, 18 minutes according to this recording, so that is slightly concerning. If this is going to continue, then it's going to be problematic for getting a device fully charged off this, but we'll leave it to be and see what happens. So we're 23 minutes in and it's now under 4.5 volts, which is spectacularly poor performance. I'm going to drop off the load ever so slightly just to see if the voltage recovers any out of the power bank, and then I'll put it back up. So we'll drop it to 1.5 amps. It's recovered to 5 volts. So if I go back up to 2 amps, what point does it drop off? So at 2 amps we're seeing 4.8 volts, so I think I'm going to leave this at 2.1. I mean, it does clearly say on the box 5 volt 2.1 amp output. Get that back in focus. So I'm going to hold it to that for the test. It only seems fair. So let's go back up to 2.1 amps. There we go. So 4.5 volts. Not good. Well, this is no good. It's dropping out completely now at 2.1 amps. Really not great. So having done a little test while this is recharging, I've currently plugged in an iPad, which is probably the highest charging current device I've got access to without, a real device. And it's still only pulling 1 amp. The iPad, I've discharged it enough that it'll be charging as fast as it can, or as fast as it thinks it can. And it is only pulling 1 amp out of this device. So it's advertising. I looked up in the manual. DCP stands for Dedicated Charging Port, which is one of the kind of base level USB standards for charging, and it's reporting the standard says 1.5 amps, which is interesting. It means that it's not doing the full 1.5 amps that it should be able to, but I don't know if that's a side effect of Apple only doing increased charging rates with their proprietary chargers. So this will deliver 1 amp consistently. I don't have any Android devices here to test, but I do wonder if actually the 2 amps claimed in the documentation is simply not true. But I'll finish charging this up and then we'll do a proper discharge test at 1.5 amps. So it's charged again. All 4 lights are lit. So let's try this again at 1.5 amps. So I've reset the count on this to 0. Okay. Too far. Okay, let's use the fine adjustment dial. Or 1.5 amps. Okay. Now we'll see what happens. So there we have it. It's finally run out. So it's not behaving very cleanly. When the load drops off, it seems to pulse on and off a few times, but now it's finally stopped. So that's fairly consistent then. So if we look at the, let's just see if this is now, what does it report? Single press, 1 blob. Is it enough to fire up the meter with no load? Nope. That's okay. I switched this meter into the mode where it remembers, so it needs manually resetting, so the pulsing on and off won't affect it. So what have we got? This cable is not quite long enough. So 3030 milliamp hours, or 15,000 or 15.2 watt hours. So how does that work out efficiency wise? So if we'll take the milliwatt hours because it accounts for the voltage difference. So 15232, and then we'll divide that by the milliwatt hours figure of the batteries, which will be 5200 milliamp hours times 3.7 volts, which gives us 0.79 times 100, 79.1% efficient at converting the 3.7 volts of the lithium ion cells inside into 5 volts for USB. So it's on the average side. It's not spectacular, but it's not terrible either. What's noticeable is that this absolutely cannot sustain 2.1 amps. 1.5 amps is fine. Electrically it advertises 1.5 amps to devices. Over that it's okay, it seems to work okay, but the 2 amp, it says 2 amp maximum, and that really is a maximum. It can't sustain that for any, let me just fix the focus on that slightly, there we go. It absolutely cannot sustain that for any decent length of time. It's not running the USB output anymore. If I press and hold, it does still light up though, which is interesting. It's useful if it holds a little bit of charge back. Yep, still works in bright mode. So it obviously is capable of running the light after it's been, most of its capacity has been used, which is nice to know. So I'm guessing it cuts the power bank off after the voltage drops to a level where there's still something left in the cells, which is good to know. The only other thing that's interesting to try is whether or not it can run a device while it's charging. We can test that now. If I can get this fiddly cover off. There we go. So what I'm going to do is use the cable that came with it and plug that into the bench power supply so we get a reading of the current draw. So that's currently drawing 1.4 amps, which is reasonable. And then we'll plug the little meter in. So that's alive. Now if we plug in the load, let's dial this up to say an amp just for the sake of testing. So it's a definite maybe. So that's only 0.6 of an amp, but it's only actually outputting 4.55 volts. So if we crank that up to 1 amp, so it's only delivering 4.5 volts, which some devices will probably be happy with, but it's not brilliant. So it's outputting an amp to the meter, it's drawing 1.6 amps, from the power bank, from the power supply. So there's some power going somewhere, so it looks as though it might well do that. So not brilliant. It might be better if it's fully charged, so I'll let this charge up and then we'll try again in a little bit. So this is now charging. Second light is flashing. It's drawing 1.5 amps from the power supply. So let's see if it will run something while it's being charged. So it's powering up the meter as it did before. 4.6 volts isn't great. See if that's the same. Oops. See if that's the same under load. So half an amp, still 4.5 volts. Let's go up to an amp. So it's now drawing 1.6 amps from the power supply, which is a slight increase. It's still supplying 1.5 volts, so as long as the device doesn't care about it being a bit less than 5 volts, it does seem to work. But it's not really the 5 volts that it should be supplying, so it kind of works, but it's not ideal. And then the final thing I wanted to test, now it's reasonably charged up. If we turn it on. Nope. There we go. I assume. Okay, that's 5 volts without being charged. Turn power up. Turn the load up. Yep, so it will run. Okay, 1 amp, and it will run the light. We get to 1.5 amps. Yep. So that's good. It will run the light and a USB device. So that's useful to know. Let's just check that's on high. Yep. Okay. Let's turn that off. What else is there to say? The cable's okay. It works okay as a light. It won't really do 2 amps. 1.5 amps it seems fine and reasonably close to its claimed capacity. As a camping light it seems alright, it's quite well built, seems reasonably solid. I haven't tested the waterproofness, but it seems like it ought to be with those fiddly little how could I do that without taking it apart to see whether there's any water ingress? Let me go try. I'm going to get this wet and see what happens. Alright then. It claims to be IP65 waterproof, which is water resistant in a shower rather than full submersion, which makes sense. It's a camping light, it's probably going to get rained on. So I've run this under the shower for a minute or so, which I guess is more or less what you'd expect to see from a rainstorm while camping. So let's dry off the outside. So these little notches actually make it quite hard to properly dry off. guess they're good for grip. So let's open up the input port. There's a bit of moisture inside. Hang on, let's adjust the focus. There we go. You can see there's a bit of water got in on the output side. So if you do get this wet, you're probably going to want to make sure it dries out. Again, a little bit of... it's kind of hard to tell. Get my little magnifying glass out and see if I can see. 1 second. Doesn't appear to have got any water obviously into the USB port, but there's a little bit that's got around the outside of the plastic, the rubbery plug. The handle doesn't appear to go into the case, so I guess that's okay. There's a little bit around the outside of the power button, but again, I think that's relatively safe. This still appears to be, that's plastic. But again, can't see any. Let's just turn it on. Still works. I wouldn't trust my life to this in a heavy storm. And if you do get it wet, it's probably wise to take the rubber covers off and let the ports dry out properly. You can see there's a bit of water there behind the thing, but it's probably sufficient that it'll survive a bit of a rainstorm in a camping field or whatever. So that seems feasible, that it's water resistant. I wouldn't. It says waterproof. I mean, IP65 rating isn't waterproof. It's water resistant. So I would take it to mean that it'll survive a bit of rain, not that if you drop it in a lake it'll be okay. Would I recommend this? Well, I mean, it seems okay functionally as a light, but it doesn't live up to the specification claimed in the advert or on the box. It won't do 2 amps. It will do 1.5 amps. It advertises itself electrically via the dedicated charging port spec as 1.5 amps, and it seems to do that all the way consistently down. So in that sense, it's okay, but it's not as advertised. So in that sense, I think I'm going to have to say I don't recommend this. The one I've got is Uppel branded. The one I bought on Amazon is advertised as Milool, so I think it's the classic rebranding thing going on. There's no actual brand listed on the box. It's got the fake CE mark on it there, which doesn't have the extra spacing, so that's always a slightly ropey sign. So the only thing it does have on it is from the label, which is from Amazon, Milool. So yeah, it's okay. I'll probably continue to use it in the garden as a light. Does it have great value as a power bank? No, not so much. It'll take forever to charge a device, because certainly iOS devices will only charge at 1 amp, and it can't do 2 amps. So it's not brilliant from that point of view, but interesting fun nonetheless. If you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing. There's a website at powerben.ch where I'll be writing up the summaries of the reviews, so if you don't want to watch the videos, you don't have to. But it's always appreciated if you'd subscribe anyway, as it helps me, keep the channel going. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.